Hi, good afternoon. I'm Rodman Primack. I'm the Chief Creative Officer of Design Miami. I know a lot of you in the room, so it's sort of superfluous that I'm introducing myself, but anyway, I'm Rodman. And I have the great pleasure of introducing you all, if you don't know already, the wonderful François Halard, who's joining me today. François is an incomparable photographer and visionary and talent, and was someone, please sit down, François, someone whose work has always inspired me. And so it's been an incredible pleasure to work with you for the last few months to curate Design at Large. So I hope you've all had a chance to see François' exhibition here on the ground floor of Design Miami. This is our 5th Design at Large exhibition. And I don't say this, the way I do, you know what, I have to be honest, I say this to everybody every year. It's the best one yet. But actually, this year, because that's what everyone needs to hear when they do it, but the reality is, this is the best one. And I've heard from so many of the gallerists and from so many of the collectors that they really have connected with the exhibition this year, and they've really connected with your work. For those of you, I don't think I need to really give you an introduction, but I think just to give some of you, if you don't know it, you've been looking at François' work for many, many, many years. If you've been looking at Shelter magazines like I have been, since I was a child, because really magazines were kind of my entry point into the design world and were my entry point into the world of culture and art and everything. I've been looking at your photographs since I was a kid and losing myself in the stories that you were telling, not just in the pictures, but in the stories, and capturing the way that people live, capturing the way that architecture and design kind of impacts our life. And I didn't even realize it until I was an adult that I was looking at so many of your images for Condé Nast and for different publications. François will probably not like me to say how many years he's been working, but it's been a number of years. So you've been looking at images for a long time. And I think what's always been interesting for me, and what I really realized in the last year or so that we've been talking, is how deep your connection with design really is. Mm-hmm. You know, the Design at Large program has always been about inviting a curator that isn't necessarily someone that's an architect or a designer or a professional in the design world to look at design and talk to us about design and how they're connecting with design. And in your case, I didn't realize that basically you kind of are a curator of design because you've been really in it for so long. Yes. And even from an early stage. So I'd love for you to tell me, and tell all of us, a little bit about where you came from, your childhood, and sort of how your eye developed for this.
Yes, because I mean, first, to make also like an introduction, I think it was a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to go outside the magazine work. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, I find after many, many years of doing that, I find it very restrictive to have always your pictures combined in a small format, designed by people we don't necessarily like the way they do, or with a text that maybe you don't like, you know. Mm-hmm. So you lose, I think you lose the personality, and that's what when Rodman has asked me to do that, which is something I'm not expert on, I just took the opportunity to be able to show the picture the way I like it, mm-hmm. which is big, because I think when you look at architecture photography, I think it's better to see it big because you have a kind of idea of sharing the space. Mm-hmm. with the photos. Mm-hmm. It's like, I think it's not a question of size, but it's a question of sharing the feeling of the space, mm-hmm. big enough that you understand actually about it, mm-hmm. and you can make a detail big or like a room smaller. Mm-hmm. So you can actually play with space. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in a family where my grandfather was involved in design. My parents were very involved in design as well. And for example, when I was growing up in my kids' room, I remember I had a Spanish four-poster bed, 16th century, mm-hmm. next to a Achille Castiglione lamp, mm-hmm. and I had a Zanota Super Studio desk to work on. So, and for me, I was always being very paying attention to the detail and to the design. And because my parents were actually dealing with a lot of Italian design way before it became fashionable, I used to read Zanota catalog, Dryad thing. So that was my childhood reading. I started to collect Domus and Abitare when I was maybe 14, instead of having a, I don't know, motorbike magazine. Or so I was, because I think at the end you get such an inspiration about design. I think it helps you to go through moment of your life. I think it's nice to put your eyes on something really beautiful. And I think it's really meaningful. And basically, that's what I wanted really to do, photography, to start with. It was really not a final expression, but a way to share what I really did love. And then after, I was lucky enough to get access to some of the most beautiful places. And for me, it was, okay, François, you get such a good chance to do that. Why don't you do the best of it? Why you don't try for yourself? Because I think what makes a very big difference with other photographers is they don't do the work for themselves. They just do the work for the command, for the job.
For the job.
For the job. And for me, I always put, my wish to make it the best out of it first. So first I do it for myself, and the magazine or the books is just a way of sharing with the other one the opportunity of that moment. Well,
when I can't remember when we had this conversation or this story there, but at some point we talked.
Actually.
We talk a lot. You can imagine that. I don't know if you guys can tell already that the two of us can talk for hours and forever. And you're just actually going to do that, is watch us talk and have fun. But I remember at a certain point we were talking about like a red bench or something outside the window of your house.
Yes,
that
correct.
sort of inspired you. It was like one of the first things that you thought, I need to photograph that. I need to get it. Remind me the story, because I can't really remember.
It was a red bench in my garden, and that's the bench I looked at the window, and of course, I started very naturally photographing what was around me. So I took the camera of my dad and basically photographed my room, my objects surrounding me. So it's not that I really started having an idea of photographing design. Actually, I wanted to be a war photographer. I wanted to be politically engaged because some of people of my family were war correspondents, and I think it was so cool to be, in Vietnam and be in the front line and everything. So actually, I ended very far from that.
You were in the front line with Anna for 20 years,
Yes.
the front line of fat.
It's like being the front line. But, so I started to photograph what I had in front of me. Very, very
We've spoken
simple.
about it before, and I think it's really true when I speak with creative people, and which I do quite a lot in this role, that there's something about, I think, people that grow up looking at specific things that no matter what comes out in their work again later, whether they grow up in a landscape that's quite beautiful or their parents collect something, there's no way to kind of separate that from that. And the idea that at a certain point you were given money, I think at your 18th birthday or graduation or something, and you wanted to take that money and go and buy furniture rather than to go on a trip or something like that.
For example, for my 18th birthday, instead of asking for, a motorbike, I asked that my parents bring me to the Milan Fair because I was really interested by looking at the first Alchemia collection and the first silver collection of Ettore Sottsass.
Amazing.
So that was I was really obsessed by it. So, because I think you can only succeed in what you do only if you are totally, focused with it. I mean, not only both ways, focus in terms of photography, but focus also in terms of mind. You have really to think about it, you have to love it, you have to be really dedicated to it. This is not something you can do from, let's say, 9 to 5 and then after having another life, I always think about photography or what I'm going to do next. All the it's like something really, I don't sleep at night and the first thing that would come to my mind is what I'm going to do next, how I can be more at ease with it or more excellent at it, and that was for me really the opportunity that Rodman gave it to me. It's to be able to see to another audience than magazine, another way of me looking at photography, architecture, and design.
I mean, one of the things that I think is interesting about your work and your language, and if you guys know any decorators, and I'm sure that you do, sort of every decorator in the world hopes that if they get, if they're going to be published in Architectural Digest or in Vogue or something like that, that they can get the editor, the commissioning editor, to get François. Like that's like the number one thing. If you are having a project published,
and a lot of people lie about it. Say, oh, what they try to call me because many people say, oh, we ask for you, but the magazine promised me they will ask, and apparently you were not available, and I had no idea what you're talking about because I never get that phone call.
It's happened to me with you. It's happened to me that I've been like the bait and switch. It's like, oh,
yes,
François Hallard's going to be in LA, and they want to shoot your house, and you're like, of course, I'll
I
do
give it to the magazine,
and then they send some hack that takes like pictures, and you're so disappointed. But the thing that I was thinking about is like, I think that in your work, there's this incredible commitment, like in the same way that a war correspondent really gets committed to being a journalist and telling stories. You're really committed to telling stories about living in design. When did that moment happen? Like to say, I'm not going to go to Vietnam. I'm going to go to the south of France, or I'm going to go to Capri, or I'm going to go to this place, and I'm going to start cataloging and capturing these things with the same sort of intensity and the same sort of level of focus. Was there a specific thing or even a specific commission that someone said to you, go and do this?
It was, I was in my art school. I was the youngest student in the art decorative before having the bag, so like at 17. And I needed to work because my parents didn't want to support me as a photographer. So I had to make a living out of it right away. I mean, it's not like a question I had to, to wait and to do few other experiences. So I had to find a way of, of having a job. And it was at the moment where a French magazine were born called Décoration Internationale. And I was searching for a job. I mean, working as a photographer assistant while being at the school and start doing my own photos. And my parents asked me to do the decor with their booth in a furniture fair like this. And I did actually pictures of their furniture that I printed myself big in black and white. So in a way, doing that wall, it's like a reminiscence of doing my first presentation of the work. And then, the editor at that time saw those pictures and said, but who did it? And my mom said, it's my son. And the next day, they asked me to go to the magazine to show my portfolio. And I just finished doing on vacation, I just finished photographing a garden in Italy, a Renaissance garden. So I show them in black and white because I always liked black and white pictures. And they said, but where's the rest of the story? And I just said, I had just the money to buy one roll of film. So the rest is to come. So when I started to get a job as photo editor for that magazine, and as well as this kind of staff photographer in a way. And actually, I did learn a lot working with other photographer pictures. I think you learn, you know, because I only had the experiences of working with other photos of people via magazine or via book, but never actually touching them, enlarge them, you know. So I did learn that a lot. And after, I had the chance to receive a phone call from Alex Lieberman, asking me if I wanted to do first the couture for American Vogue and come to New York and work for Condé Nast and have a contract for them. And I remember I did say, oh, but you know, these days I'm booked already, you know. And Alex says, maybe François, maybe you should call some people around. But normally, when Mr. Lieberman call you up to do the couture for Vogue after, you know, Penn and Avedon, I think that nobody is not available.
No one is saying no to Alexander Lieberman.
Yes. So I was very naive. First, I was not speaking English because I learned German and Latin at school. So when I first came to New York, I was like quite excited, I must say. And I remember the first job was going to Area nightclub and to photograph all the different decor.
Amazing.
So that's what, for me, it was funny to be next to Gotham Disco, because I had some Gotham furniture in my parents because nobody wanted them at the time because they were too avant-garde. So basically, stuff didn't sell at the shop, went back to the house. So, so it was
it's again a circle.
Yes, it's like, you know, like going back in circle about things I will never imagine I will be in touch again, you know, later on.
Do you feel like, and let's maybe look at a couple of images. There's one, I don't know if you can see them
it's
here.
so difficult to I mean, it's almost impossible because when they ask me to
it's
choose
impossible
some,
to edit them
what
down.
Do you do, you know, and
do you feel though that within time,
yes,
quickly a style emerged, or not even necessarily style, but an approach more than a style, like an idea of what you wanted to capture?
I must say that I do it in a very natural way. I never think about it. I never plan about it. So it's absolutely. I just in the space took my camera and start working. So I have absolutely no pre-idea of what I'm going to do or how I'm going to do approach the subject. It's totally like a kid in a playground, you know, like it's absolutely not intellectual, the approach. It's very me in the space and how I'm going to try to steal it in a way. Because I think also it's what I like very much, appropriation. Because for me, it's like I want to steal the moment I am in a space of photographing something. It's like also why I like to be a collector. So I like to collect, and I like to collect stuff from other people, and I like to collect my own stuff for making my pictures. So it's both way of I think to be reassured by the more is better in a way, you know. That's what, you know, big pictures, a lot of pictures, more books. You know, I like to produce a lot. It gives me confidence.
Do you think, in thinking about the works that you chose for the exhibition here, there's one thing about being commissioned and you go and do stories for the magazines and things, but in the case of what's here, these are all things that you've chosen that you want to show.
Exactly.
And do you think that there's a thread? There's different things. There's, you know, Malaparte, there's Barragan, there's, you know, there's a range, Torino, there's a range of different styles, aesthetics, moments and things. But within that, do you find a through line of what's connecting them? And for you, what's that through line of the stuff that you're choosing, that you want to shoot yourself, and that you want to spend time?
My love for it.
Your love for it.
Yeah, so I always dreamed to be in a Barragan house. I always dreamed being in Chambly's studio. Always dreamed to be, I don't know, in Casa Malaparte, because I knew it was my mother's favorite writer, and I knew a friend of his spending all his childhood in Capri with him. So for me, it's always, we were speaking about time. I can wait 20 years or 15 years to get 1 hour or like 1 day in a place I really want to do it, And, it's the same thing with Japan. I always dream about a book of the Imperial Garden in Kyoto in my parents since I am 12, and this year I was able to go to Japan for the first time and to see it. So I've been waiting, 50 years?
32 years.
Yeah, but it's a question of I don't know. It's just I want to be there. I want to share the experiences. When I first saw the first erotic Molino Polaroid, and I was wow, because it's a combination of design, of photography, of erotism, of his own imagination. So and actually no, to come back before, I think something will really change my mind, because my parents had a nice house, let's put it this way, and then they use it a lot for shoots. And I remember one day Helmut Newton shooting in my parents' house, and when usually photographers were coming to my house, I used to escape school because I was thinking it was far more interesting to see them working. So, and then when I saw them making their own voice just with a little box and a lens, and just without their imagination, how you transform a girl and a room, and then it's an Helmut Newton photos. And Helmut did shoot very little, because it was very greedy, so he really didn't like to spend money on film. So it just had a little, done next, like it was, and how you could make your own vision with a box, with and make an introduction, because it's intrusive. The camera is intrusive, but at the same time, it's protective because you hide behind your camera. So it's both way. It's both. I think the attraction comes on both directions.
Well, there's this interesting notion too, particularly when you've gone to photograph someone that's there or sort of in the space, whether it's Twombly at Guetta or like something like that, that there is this moment of the photographer intruding into the life, like capturing the life, and you're having this kind of exchange, and it's the same thing, even maybe with an empty house or something that that they're.
For me, a house is a person. It's. I have exactly the same approach, shooting a person or like a portrait, or shooting a project. The problem is when you don't like the portrait, the person or the place, and that I can stand it. And it's happened, very often. You've been asked to do something you really don't feel like it. Yeah. And that's tough.
And how do you get around that? Like how? Because it's just work, and you just.
You can do it just for the work. You can do it just for the money. You can do it, but with the time, it's getting more and more difficult. For example, I don't do any more catalogs, any more big commercial job. I don't feel like giving my energy anymore to something I don't really love, and so, there is, for me, there's something very important. There is A, B, and BC. There is before Bal and after Bal, because I think I've been always thinking about quitting more and more the commercial job and do something really more drastic about it. And I think I took that opportunity that the world, it's also a world between the past and the future. That's what I was so angered to do something beautiful about it.
It's interesting. We keep looping back, and one of the themes really in the exhibition is this notion of time. And time is so essential to all of us, but it's also super essential with your work in the sense that you don't take pictures with digital. You're really still working in film and Polaroids, and time is affecting that. The seconds are passing in the exposure, and like this is always translating the time that it takes to get into a house, as you were talking about, like Malaparte, and even this kind of notion of time making a line with this wall between what you've done in the past and what you want to do in the future. I think it's interesting to realize as we're talking through it right now how many circles we're going through as well, and with the Gufram and with Luma and Arl, and these things that they keep coming back to this central point with you and the way that you're relating to it. But I also was thinking about now when you were talking about the projects and being commissioned and sometimes not liking them. Do you remember going into a project and thinking, shit, I don't want to spend my time doing this?
Yeah.
And once you got there, suddenly realizing, like, wow, this is magical. Like God has given me this chance. Like, this, it's going to be terrible. And then realizing, as you look at the pictures or maybe in the shoot, like, wow, this is an incredible experience. An incredible place.
You have always the fact of reality. So, because sometimes you think yourself, this shoot is going to be great, and it's shit. And then, this shoot is really going to be awful and difficult. And then you find the people exquisite, the things you discover, something. It's, I saw Annabelle Selsdorf passing by, and, it was a Vogue assignment, and I had a great time knowing her and photographing the jobs, the places, the different projects they've been working on. And I think that's when I get such a chance to photograph a work I really appreciate or I respect, I try to do, as well, the most out of it. So I try to shoot really as much as possible. I try to really understand, to be in the work. Because I think it's the only way you can, at the end, produce a body of work, and then you can, because even if I know that if the magazine or if the people are choosing a pictures you don't like, doesn't matter, because you have the pictures you like in the box.
True.
So it's, it's not, so, and in that case, it's a moment where you can have a little more distanciation about what you do and the way people use your work. Because you know that at least you have it for yourself, and then at least, some of the pictures here, I did it 25 years ago and nobody saw it before. So, because I was thinking, that for the wall, for Basel with Rodman about design, maybe it would be a good idea to do a print of that Polaroid in black and white of the Maison Vert. I did it in the 90s, Okay. So it's, you never know when the pictures are going to be relevant, precise.
How much of a catalog do you have in your mind of all those images? When you go through the archive, are you continually like, oh, wow, I'm surprised, I can't believe it? Or do you sort of recognize the images? Do you have a card catalog in your mind of
Yes.
the images?
Yes, more or less. I mean, I have few tens of maybe 10,000 assignments, and you count few hundreds for each. So we're talking about.
So like yesterday, I think we were chatting about Philip Johnson's house for the Dominials in Houston,
correct.
which is a project that we both love. I visited it recently and was going through it with the curator, and I said to the curator, do you guys have good photographs of this house? And he sort of didn't really know. He's sort of like, yeah, I guess it's documented. And I said, well, in the back of my mind, I was already preparing to try to get Francois to come and shoot this. I was like, oh, the person that needs to shoot this incredible house that Philip Johnson designed for the Menils, and they hired Charles James to do the interiors. It's really the most sophisticated house in the world. And I was thinking, oh, I've got to get Francois to do it, and I was doing this whole thing. And then later I went online, and of course I found these photographs that Francois had taken of the Menil House, and they are perfect and amazing photographs. And then as we started speaking about it yesterday over the last couple of days, each image, you were telling me the images that I had loved so much from that and other images. So I sort of began to realize that you are like a Google of images. I should just, every time I need like an image of a house, I should be like, oh, Francois, do you happen to have,
so that would be
a Twombly, like.
That would be the little surprise for the next book.
The next book.
That's what I like to do books, because books are like, when I do a book, sometimes I like to do like thick book, like a phone book. Like an annuaire. So it's almost like an annuaire of images, you know, like a phone book of pictures. Because, I don't know, the rhythm, the facts, you look at it in a very different way, and you can come back to it. Like it's, I like the idea. It's like also like communicated not with digital, but you turn the page, you get more access, more information, so it's I like that process.
Do you always use the same paper when you're printing, or all of these?
No, for me it's very difficult to make my mind about a final product, because I always change. So I could like it's big, so I like I make the choices when I make the pictures, but I don't like make choices after with them. So which fucking paper I'm going to print with, it's shiny, matte, large, big, small, white margin. For me, I don't like to make those type of decision, because sometimes I like, it's very, that's what it was important for me to ask my friend, which I work with for 20 years, Beda Ackerman, to have an outside look at my own pictures, because I think it is the most difficult thing you can do, it's to be your own editor. So it was for me great to edit, all the booths from, Gerfram, Dababardi, all to arrange in the space. But for me to edit my own, I just had the idea of making a transition with a wall crossing in diagonal, for example. But after, and I know that I needed to show like iconic work of design and architecture. After, the way to do it, it's very hard to me to make those every moment decision.
You need someone to exchange and to talk through it and see what's happening there. I don't think that that's uncommon for visual people in general, that you can have such strong ideas, but you need someone to help you filter through.
Otherwise, I could have done, I don't know, 50 different times, and with different pictures and with different, like it's very, I like to be helped to have somebody edit your own thing, So I think it's very important. So I like when I do like a commercial job or like a book, to work with a strong editor, strong art director, to share a strong vision with somebody.
And on the backside of doing this project of like curating, an exhibition about design, curating, this mega wall, your own exhibition within a larger exhibition. Do you feel like you're walking away from it with a different ideas about what you want to do next? Does this experience influence what you want to do? Has it given you some ideas about new directions on this other side of the wall?
I like to see it like I'm showing the rest of the world, publicly an aspect of my work, and then see what's going on. I will have no idea of what's going to be next. I'm really open to everything, basically.
I think that's something that we would all love, to see what more you'll do with it. he and I can talk forever, and so I wonder if it's a good time to see if there are questions from the audience, or if anyone else has some ideas or thoughts that they want to ask François, both about his work, about the design at large. We've looked at some of the images. You guys have seen some of these images that are in the exhibition. It really hasn't been a conversation about these images, but if there's an image that you guys saw that you wanted to ask a question about, we could also do that. But I find him such a wealth of knowledge. I wonder if anyone else would like to ask a question. Or not, you don't have to.
No, but also like an important, also speaking about photographic appropriation.
Yeah.
That's what I like to mix the media. Mm-hmm. For example, I love that the fact I was able to translate when I did the Studio Morandi pictures, mm-hmm. that with that monochromic things that remind me of painting of Morandi, mm-hmm. because you get that monochromatic quality. Yeah. So you have to know very well what you are going to photograph, mm-hmm. and you have to love it, I think, to make strong pictures. So you have to be really dedicated, even if you don't think about it, but you have to make en sorte que you're going to translate it in a very subtle, with subtlety and
when we were in Mexico, we happened to be in Mexico City together in the spring, and you were shooting Barragan houses.
Yes.
And I'd sort of see you every once in a while in the evening and sort of away. And I have to say, every time I saw you, you were filled with this crazy intensity. You had so much energy and so much kind of excitement about getting up and going and going to Casa Gilardi, going to this one, going to that one. And I felt like there was definitely a story kind of unspooling in your mind as you were going from each one of these houses to each one of these houses. Did you feel on sort of the other side a real connection with the architect, really feeling wow?
Of course. I mean, and I think it's because I knew very well almost all of the Barragan books and projects, and they have been very well documented. So it's not something you're going to make people discover it's new. Mm-hmm. But that's what I was so focused mm-hmm. on, how you make your own pictures of already a masterpiece who have mm-hmm. been photographed and that everybody has known. So, it's a question of, and then if you don't really, focus at it, it cannot happen, It's not, so you really not have to think, but you have to feel it in a very mm-hmm. strong way. And, for example, it's with Malaparte, the same thing. I knew the Günther Ferg pictures and how you can make it your pictures, mm-hmm. knowing that other people have done it very well as well. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's a question of also not to be afraid of the task, but also to be able to know what the others have been doing with that, mm-hmm. and to find your own way in between.
And do you realize or recognize your role in creating images that are then going to help people create structures that you will then take images of as well? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. There's, no, I don't think about it. No, I know it's true because some people say, "Oh, we were so influenced by something you did X years ago about something," mm-hmm. but it's not. It's not
conscious when.
No, absolutely not. No.
After.
No.
Amazing. Questions? I was being really honest. We can keep going and going and going.
Yes, yeah, so
I know. I have a list of maybe 5 questions, but I'm only going to ask one. There's so much furniture upstairs and downstairs in the fair, and I'm curious to know, because we haven't talked about this yet, what are some of the things you've seen here that you are desirous of or that you like, and if not here, then in the design world at large? What are you looking at in furniture?
Actually, many things.
I bet. I'm not surprised.
So that's what I left my checkbook in Paris. So I was to make sure I will not be be tempted or being.
They'll send you invoices, don't worry.
I know, but I'm not sure it will be quite, full. No, I mean, it's a joke, but it's not a joke. For example, having lived in the Maison Vert and going to the Jacques Lacoste booth and see, I bet, of course I can be only attracted by it, but I have the chance to live with it, so I don't need to buy it. So, it's a way sometimes of photographing something. I can have it without having to pay for it. It's a strange, it's a strange way. It's like, for example, when I bought, that's what I wanted to have actually, that pictures in front of you, because when I was lucky enough at 24 to be able to photograph all the Pierre Berger and Yves Saint Laurent collection, that gave me a true idea of what a design collection and a painting collection is all about. So it's and that put the quality and the comparison quite. Because if you then after you have a different perspective. Since I cannot afford any of them, I can afford to have them be photographs. And I can have it like, I don't know, imagine a mom having pictures of these kids. I have pictures of my object to carry on with me, like memories and attraction and combination, For example, it was fun to see, for example, the César table at Suzanne Damisch, because I had the chance to photograph César, and he used to go out with a friend of my mother. So it's like all this cross de référence. So I was very happy to have also looking at Chanel things, because I love, unfortunately, old stone. And I could never stop buying it. I don't know. And then, thanks God, I can go at Maya Hoffman and see all the big Prouvé collection, so I don't need to go at upstairs to buy a table.
That's again because you can go see it at Maya's.
I can see at Maya's, like a Prouvé pavilion. So it's that the chance to be able to make your everyday life close to those objects and things. That's what it's. And for example, I didn't know the name of the gallery, but I was such a fan of Rietveld, so just to see 4 Rietveld chairs, that quality, it's like amazing. And if I was a collector, I would have bought the 4 of them the first half an hour. Things like that. And I'm a good friend of Stuart. I know Stuart for when we were almost kids. So just to see his love for Italian car design, I wish to have a Ferrari, but since I know, it's like playing with toys, and you play with toys and you being in a nice playground.
I feel like I need to learn how to take pictures, because unfortunately I'm constantly in debt because I go around the fair and buy things. But this is a good new technique. Rudy would be so happy if I could just take pictures and be contented with the photograph of the object.
Exactly.
It's actually a good philosophy, though.
It gives me the same joy.
Yeah.
Because you share the object and you share the photographs almost every day, and then you think about the artist, you think about the art. It's a constant enjoyment.
Yeah.
And I think it's a way to go through life, because life it's not always happy road. So I think to be able to surround yourself with something you really enjoy, and I think that's what I think people collect, and because it needs to be reassuring about, stuff around themselves.
Any more questions? Sure. We'll bring you a microphone. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Do you have an idea of how your audience perceives your work and how that changed over time, especially now with fast imagery always publishing and different generations digesting imagery in different ways? Have you seen that in your own work, how people look at your work?
Yes. Actually, I was very disappointed, I'm sorry, because I lost one of my big clients to a fucking Instagrammer, and that really pissed me off. As an example.
Who was it? Because then we
I don't know,
unfollow.
I don't know, but for example, say, but why I don't do this, big job anymore, and saying, because you were not an influencer on Instagram, and the guy who just knew to do a picture with his fucking phone, I was really upset about it, because it's two different things. We're not talking the same language, we're not talking the same speed. You cannot enjoy a print and a phone thing at the same time. It's not the same, balance. This is two different things. And I think right now there's too many of that. So I think it's and this is why in the middle of it, the magazines are losing, because the magazines are slightly better version than the phone pictures, but not really. So that's what now it's much more important, much more value to do books or exhibition or things like that. Because now people look at the magazine, next, boom, and like attention span, couple of seconds per page, more or less. And since the magazines are so afraid now of the internet position, you have less and less less content. And after, people doing magazines say, why they buy less magazine? But if we have less and less content, why are you going to buy them? Because you can look at it, the same thing on your phone. So I think it's really a good question about two different kinds of photography and approach to imagery. And I don't mind making a phone things. For example, I did an exhibition with just making iPhone pictures, but that's something different. You cannot make the two cohabit, at the same time. And so you have to make you have to choose if you do this or do that, but not treat them equally.
So do you think the responsibility lies in the curator or the audience, or the editors?
Everybody. But you have to understand also that image is constantly changing. So that's I have absolutely. If I do. Let's be honest, for example. If I do still analog pictures, I really hate spending time on the computer. So for me, it's much easier to make a roll of film, send it to the lab, I know exactly what to do with it. So, I know that craft. Some young generation know another craft. My craft is maybe not better than the other craft. It's just something I know how to do it better than many other people. That's why I don't want to approach something where I'm going to be less good about it, and my image is going to be less, less what I imagine it would be. So, I don't make it a value in terms aesthetically. It's just two different things. And I think people will always want to make that fight between digital versus this, quick media versus. I think both can live happily together.
Unless we totally lose, unless people stop reading magazines entirely, which I think is part of your point, is that
it's going to happen anyway.
as the content gets less and less interesting, then there's less reason to buy the magazine, and it's sort of this cycle.
So I think they're killing themselves by themselves.
Any more?
A question I wanted also to raise is, since the magazine have less content, the selling of books for that matters, it's much higher.
Yeah.
For example, when I did my monography, when I'm not a famous photographer, like for the public eyes, and I sold maybe 10,000 copies of. So it shows that people put their interest into something else. But I think it is also the magazine fault, responsibility.
It's funny that you say that about the books, because I feel like in the last 5 years, as I kept thinking books were going to disappear, and it feels like it's like my single-handed job in the world to keep the publishers alive. I'm like a hoarder at home with books falling on top of me, but the reality is that book sales are up higher than ever, and I think it's because, as François was saying, there's less places to find that kind of content, and so you look for it in books.
Because you want to learn something, because not everything is available on the
internet or on
the
Instagram
internet,
or somewhere like that.
it's if you really want to know very well a subject or an architect or a project, you have to have the books. You have to have you have to do your research in the old style way. You have to go to a library. Each time I am in New York, for example, I have an assignment or I discover something, I go to the Strand, I go to the section, and I spend a few hours, and I spend, each time I go to New York, I go to the Strand 2 times, 3 times a week, because it's where you get still the information you're going to find, I don't know, an old Picasso catalog from the first exhibition in '56 in Avignon. It's where you find things, And I think that's very important to, when you look at a subject, when you are interested by the subject, you search for it and you fight for it, basically.
By the way, we have François' books here at the bookstore.
No, that's not.
And so you might want to buy some books. You might want to buy some books at the bookstore.
That was not the purpose.
This talk was sponsored by The Strand.
Yes, exactly. By the paper.
The Strand bookstore on Broadway and 13th Street.
The best bookshop in the world. The biggest bookshop in the world.
This is true.
Actually.
Are there any more questions?
That's why we both live a block from it, because we live in the same street in New York, which was also a totally coincidence. And in between also, almost my apartment and his apartment, there is a Strand.
It's the bookstore. We meet at the bookstore. It's like a Venn diagram. Anyway, François, thank you so much for spending the time with us, with me, with doing this project. If you haven't seen the design at large yet, you need to go and spend some time and see the larger curatorial project that you've done, and then also the exhibition specifically of your photographs that's within it. It's been really a highlight this week of Basel. We're getting such great feedback about it, and it's been such a pleasure to do this with you. Thank you. And thank you for this talk. Thanks for coming today, guys. Thank you.